Does the idea of having a personal brand make you turn up your nose and get all, antsy? Maybe you're thinking, as a professional working in an organization, do I really even need a personal brand? Isn't that something for entrepreneurs and business people? Is it even possible to have one as a professional? And if so, what does that look like and how can I get one if I don't already have one? I'll be answering all these questions and more in today's episode because every creating maven needs to know this to set themselves apart and get paid to be themselves. Hey, creating maven. I'm Joy Spencer, your Reframe specialist, with one important message. Your real work, it's not your job or your career. Your real work is what you create. And what you create is what sets you apart and makes you incomparable. It's your legacy. I'm here to show you a whole new way of working so you can create with your gifts, make a unique contribution, and finally get paid to be yourself. This is Reframe to Create. A couple months ago, I got sucked into watching this amazing show on Amazon Prime, which is Next in Fashion. Unfortunately, it only had one season, and the hosts were Tan France and Alexa Chung, and this was a fashion show. And so for those of you who know Project Runway, you are probably familiar with these type of shows where fashion designers are on the show, they're competing with each other in order to win some big prize to help develop their business. So I got sucked into this, and after watching the show, which had only one season, I then went on to watch The Cut, which was Heidi Klum and Tim Gunn's follow-up to Project Runway. So it ended up that I watched like 3 seasons of these 2 different shows that it was all about fashion and about designers running around, getting their material, taking on the challenges and trying to, win the prize. One show had a prize of $1 million. And what I noticed in the midst of all this excitement and seeing the amazing clothing and all that stuff was something that kept surfacing over and over again. And it was this idea of a brand. And what I noticed was that the designers who ended up sort of bubbling to the top, ended up getting lots of attention, ended up getting noticed and winning the different challenges week after week, were those who had come into the show already having a sense of knowing about who they were and what their brand was. And they had a very particular voice and a way that they designed their clothes week after week after week. And whether you hated it or loved it, the judges started to notice who they were and started to sort of be able to identify their brand. And they would say things like, oh, I know who made that outfit. Because as soon as the clothing would come out, they would see a certain signature way of creating the clothing. And so those people, whether they love them or hate them, would sort of get to the top and end up winning challenges. But then what I also noticed was that those who sort of like kept getting cut out of the competition early and quick, and this was across both shows, whether this was The Cut or Next in Fashion, were the people who the judges kept saying things like, well, I'm a little confused, or I don't really know yet what your brand is or what this person's voice is or what they're trying to say. So even if they might have liked 1 or 2 of their individual outfits, because they couldn't quite track and understand who they were or get a sense of what their brand was, those folks just sort of like fell to the bottom of the list and eventually got cut out. And those who rose to the top were those who had a clear brand, clear voice, either coming in from the beginning, or if they didn't have one clearly from the beginning, they hustled real quick in the course of the show to clarify what their brand was and get into that signature, consistent creation in very short order. And those were the people who were winning challenges week on week, or eventually won the whole show. And what this taught me was something very important. What I learned from these 2 shows was this: a personal brand is non-negotiable. And this applies to everyone, and especially to you, my creating maven, who is a professional in a work environment, who might think this doesn't apply to you. It does, and it is very important. And this is why. A personal brand gives you something very important. It makes you identifiable and referable. It makes you distinguishable. It's something that helps people to sort of know who you are, what you bring to the table, and that makes it so much easier to talk about you when you're not in the room. And that is what you want your brand to do. That's what a brand does for people. It helps to attract more of the work that you want, because when you're not in a room and other people are talking about you and what you have to offer, they don't need your help to figure that out. And they can be very accurate. They're like, I know this person, I know what they can deliver, and this is why they are the right person for us to send this particular type of work to them. And it ends up being exactly the work that you want if you're very careful about your brand. It helps you to get work that is in line with your interest, your power, your strength, and your greatest and most unique contribution. Your brand is important for making you identifiable and referable when you are not in the room. And a personal brand is not what you think. It's not a statement that you make. It's not how you self-promote. It's not even the image that you wish that you have or the particular clothing that you wear. It's not what you say about yourself or what you want or who you think you are or what you want to believe. It's much simpler than that. Your personal brand is the very tangible thing or experience that you create consistently, and how that clarity leads people to recognize you and come to expect that and more of that from you. That's it. Your personal brand is what you create. Let me say that again. Your personal brand is what you create. It's what you create consistently and the expectation people come to have of you because of it. That expectation is your reputation, a reputation that attracts work, a reputation that speaks for you clearly and accurately when you are not in the room. So back to the cut and next in fashion, those fashion designers, and when we think about fashion, it's kind of like the easiest, it's like an easy example. The brand of each fashion designer was literally the clothing that they made, the style, the construction, all of that. It was literally this tangible thing, and that was their brand. It didn't matter what they were saying about themselves outside of that moment. When it came to each competition moment, that thing that they created was their brand. It's what made them stand out or not. And so for you, what does this mean, especially as a professional? It's similar, right? You might not be in a profession where you're designing clothes, but you still are creating things and experiences. And I've talked about this in previous episodes. If you want to know what your brand is, you can look around right now at what you've already created and what you're creating right now. What have you created through the course of your career in different roles and jobs that you've been in? What type of things have you been putting out into the world? Are you known for creating a certain project, product, service, or experience everywhere that you go? Or is there something that's been bubbling to the top for you where you are right now? That thing that you create consistently is your brand, for better or for worse. It's so simple. And yet for a professional, there can be a danger in this as well. Because your brand is not what you talk about or say about yourself or even what other people say about you. Your brand is what you're creating. And many people are creating brands that they don't know they're creating. And those brands end up at the end of the day being what they don't want. Think about it. This is a mistake I see professionals make constantly. Maybe you can identify. You walk into a role and you want to prove yourself and show yourself as hardworking and useful right away, which is a big mistake, but we'll talk about that later. So you do anything and everything, any assignment that comes your way, you're after it and you're working hard on it. Whenever volunteers are needed, you're like raising your hand from the back of the room and jumping up and down just to get right in. You think you want to be known as hardworking, and yeah, that becomes part of your reputation. But then at the end of the day, that's so nondescript. Then you have this hodgepodge, motley mix of things you've created from different projects or working with different people and different things that you've had a part of, but none of them tell a real cohesive story of who you are. Then you know what happens? You become the resident workhorse. You want it to be known as hardworking, right? Well, that's what you get. All and lots of hard work, random work, anything that other folks are stumped on or they don't like. All that stuff just ends up showing up at your door. You are the place where all the lost projects go. You're literally turned into the most appreciated trash can at your job. And oh my goodness, this is what they say. We don't know what we do without you. Oh my goodness, you're so awesome. You can fix anything, everything. We can count on you. We can come to you for anything, everything. Yeah. It's not that you're not valued. It's that you're misvalued. You're not underutilized, you're misutilized. And now you're struggling to know who you are and what you even want, because everything is driven by the latest problem that has come up and it's being placed at your feet. And what else are you going to do? You're going to knock it out of the park. You're going to be great because that's what you do. You're a hardworking, hamster. That's your brand. But I want better for you. This is why you have to be intentional and deliberate about what you create, because that is your brand. And it's what will signal and attract more of the same to you. And you have to be careful about this. To make your brand work for you and not against you, you need to make sure you have an intentionally, narrowly focused and consistent brand. To do this, you need to start looking at what you're creating. Just stop for a moment and look around. What are you creating? And when you identify something that you're like, yeah, I like this, what I've created, and I want to be invited to create it over and over again, you need to narrow down on it, double down on it, and create that thing or those things, that service, that project, that experience over and over and over again. Because creating all and sundry things makes you confusing, or even worse, helps you become known as just hardworking, which means that you're the perfect workhorse donkey for everyone to just load up all their randoms. And I don't want that for you. There are so many examples of people or companies or industries that are winning in this area of branding and able to attract more of what they want or the type of people or the customers they want. People in things like Apple, Oprah, or even like Barbara Walters. Like for those who in the 2000s and 90s knew that Barbara Walters was the person who you went to if you wanted to hear like these great, amazing interviews of the stars, and very likely that they were going to start crying, right? When you start to expect certain things from people or groups or companies, you know that they have a strong and solid and clear brand. And when what they've created for themselves is exactly what they want to attract more and more of, their brand is working for them. So what's next? For you, it's time to be intentional. What work do you want to be known for and asked to do over and over again? And when you identify that, are you willing to commit and focus and narrow down on it? Are you willing to say, yes, I'm committing to this? Because once you do, we're going to look for the things that you've already created that are in line with this and create more and more on that. We're going to double down, because what you create is your personal brand. And that's what's going to attract more and more of the work that you want and help you get paid to be you. To do this, you need to think about and develop a creating portfolio. And what is that? A creating portfolio is just a way of identifying and highlighting more of what you want to create by looking back on what you created that you want more of, and beginning to also identify what you don't want and shoving those things to the back, and beginning to build on what you want, and beginning to identify all the things, whether they're products, services, or experiences that are part of your portfolio that help to attract and identify who you are and what it is that you want to do more of. I hope it's now crystal clear to you why you as a professional need to take your personal brand seriously. If you're creating things at work, you're already by default developing a personal brand. It just might not be the one that you want. A brand is a powerful thing and works like a magnet that attracts more and more of the same to yourself. You need to be careful and very intentional about the brand you're creating so that you can get paid to be yourself and not get paid to be someone else. Knowing what your brand is as simple as knowing what you're creating, because what you create is your personal brand. If you're ready to finally get paid to be you this year, then let's do an audit and get you set up for success with your creating portfolio. It only takes 2 sessions to get you set up and on track. And if you're ready to make this investment in yourself, then contact me to hear more about this package by emailing me at joy@reframetocreate.com with your name and creating portfolio in the subject line. I can't wait to work with you on this. See you soon, Creating Maven. Until then, remember to always ask yourself, what will I create?